We're very happy to start this meeting with the residents of Zayit neighborhood. צריך להגביר. We traditionally, every few months, hold a parlor meeting of this kind, each time in a different neighborhood, and the heads of the various departments. We have Bob, Shoshi Bosch, the head of the Matnas, Yossi, the head of the education department, Sharon is the treasurer, and Moshe Ben Elisha, and the engineer, and there are a few others that are still have to come, and some ill, won't be able to make it this morning, with an eye to tell you what has developed regarding specific neighborhoods, and we're also to hear from the people themselves. Sometimes there are specific subjects, like 6 months ago we had a special meeting on specific subjects, and sometimes we talk about general subjects. The only reason we ask to get the questions in advance is that so we can give you proper answers to the question, but generally speaking, we will answer all the questions we've received. There are quite a few questions that talked about projects happening in Zayit, and I'd like to tell you about the projects that are in the early stages, and then we'll open the floor to questions and answers. For those who didn't ask in advance, and those questions that perhaps I didn't answer, if somebody wants to ask about something that I said, or also to make themselves heard, if they have any ideas. We also have the members of the Moitza here, Menachem Spitz, who is the deputy and acting mayor voluntarily, and Orit, who also lives in Zayit, and she's also very helpful. So I would like to relate to a number of general questions that came up before I talk about the projects. First of all, I talk about the cellular reception in Zayit. We're trying to get, in the past 2 months, there's been a lot of development because of, unfortunately, security events that have occurred, and the government has understood that not all of Judean Samaria is covered with cellular properly, and there's the whole area of Pitum Aktoret and Hadagan neighborhood as well. Currently, there are 3 areas we're working on. One is a phone company that's called Makon that can address all the areas that don't have, they'll put up an antenna, and on its antenna it will agree to put on devices that will transmit to all the cellular companies. The main problem with telephone is that the place they decided to put up the antenna, there is no electricity yet, and we have to see how we can bring electricity to that pole. And it seems something simple. You take a cable and you bring an extension cord, like you put your electricity in the sukkah, but they can't do it that way. Of course, it has to be done properly to provide proper electricity to the antenna. Another alternative is on the Knesset level. Moti Yogev, the Knesset member, has been trying to work on the issue of providing cellular coverage for all roads in Judean Samaria. That appears a little bit less promising right now. And the third area that we're going to be working on, there is a private company that has proposed putting up transmitters on electrical poles that will provide cellular coverage and Wi-Fi to the entire area, and we're currently looking into the possibility of doing a pilot of that nature after we're convinced that it is all right environmentally and health-wise. Option 1 and option 3 seem the most feasible at this point and the fastest. The problem of cellular reception is well known, but we have to understand that the third option, which is a very innovative thing, it's not something that the Moitza can solve at this point. We have to work with the cellular companies, and we're trying to find solutions for this issue out of the understanding that ultimately this is a security need first and foremost, in addition to all the other issues. The story of the dogs, roaming dogs, from the reports, our reports and our surveys, we've seen that there has been a drastic drop in the number of roaming dogs. The main reason is that we have discovered a place where our Arab neighbors would throw dead animals, and the dogs came to eat the carcasses that they scattered there. We managed to clean up that area, and as a result of that, we cut short the source of food for those wild dogs, and we also put out traps, and we also received a very exceptional authorization to use live fire to stop the dogs. The whole issue of the dogs, for those who don't know, I've said it many times, I'm sorry to say, this is a national problem. In Efrat also, we have encountered quite a number of struggles with various animal rights organizations who are worried more about the dogs than anything else, and we're seeing more and more rights being given to animals and fewer possibilities of eradicating the problem. There are currently discussions that began in Bet Shemesh in the High Court of Justice, which hasn't been decided yet. There is a claim and a demand to capture the animals and to sterilize them so that they won't multiply. And we're aware of the problem of these wild animals that are multiplying, certainly in those places where near open areas, places where there are settlements. So obviously the animals, the dogs come less. But when you have a town or an area that is where there is an open area like Bet Shemesh and Efrat, the phenomenon of wild dogs is very common, and there are more animals that are born and grow up, and in those times where there are fewer births of animals, then we see fewer dogs. Things we're going to talk about later on. This is a long-term problem, and this is what we've been planning, and we're in the final stages. We are going to, the hope is that when we're looking at garbage that is underground, we want that the garbage to be closed more hermetically, and we won't have all these open green containers, and then we won't have the dogs also coming to look for food in the garbage trucks, garbage cans. And when this will go into effect in the coming weeks, and the application will be from north to south. In other words, we're going to start with the northern neighborhoods, Zayit, Tamar, and Dagan, in those populated areas. And the moment we have 30 active garbage containers, we'll be able to start with the new projects. And until we don't have at least 30 of these hidden or closed, sealed garbage containers, and we hope within a few months we'll have the situation of 30 that are ready for operation, and then we'll see it working. We're planning to have them all over the Efrat, up to Rimon and Teina. We're trying to put them in parking spaces, and we're trying to get more parking spaces because the story of the parking places is well known, and that issue is known. We've been asked about renovating the playgrounds, with especially Park Tzvika, and using grass there instead of gravel. I can say that personally, when I was elected 9 years ago and I asked the treasurer, who was the director general then also, when we're going to work on the park and replace it, he said he didn't know, not because he didn't want to, but because at that time the development budget at the disposal was 500,000 shekels, and to replace the playground would cost about 2 million shekels. After 9 years, we can say that we are almost completing a round of replacing all the playgrounds in Efrat. We haven't forgotten a single park, and if when I say that we finished, if you think there's something that I've forgotten, then let me know, please. When the priorities were determined based on safety considerations, and the Standards Institution surprised us and started to dismantle playgrounds that didn't meet the standards, and there was one on Zerubbabel Street at the start of the street and another on Isra Street, where the Standards Institution simply came and dismantled the playground and left us with an empty lot. And so the first thing we did was to replace and then we understood, we started to replace the installations, and then we realized we have to have a rubber flooring underneath it, which got warm, and we thought that it would be good, and it cost tens of thousands of shekels, and ultimately we realized that replacing each part costs hundreds of thousands of shekels, but nevertheless, after 9 years, we can say that we have almost completed the entire round of playgrounds. We still have near the Ezra branch or chapter, there's still wooden playground, and there's also Park Akuskus, and we're making an effort to get to all of them. I just want to say that we have to remember that the costs are high, and the municipal taxes that we all pay relatively for Gush Etzion are low, and those who think the taxes are high here, you should check. You can look right to the right and left. We still have a relatively low municipal tax for Gush Etzion settlements compared to similar places. Managing 97% of the population, the taxes that we collect, it's a very high percentage. And if you know what's going on in Yerushalayim, you'll see that that's especially high. And the taxes that we collect is only about 15% of the budget. So if we want to do everything that we want to do, we have to find other sources of financing. It's easy to say we want this and we want that, and everyone has to run their own household finances. Ultimately, you have to provide an answer where the money is going to come from for these things. And we can look with satisfaction. 2008, we had, in 2008, was 40 million shekel, and in 2016 it was 80 million shekel. We'll see where we are in 2018, and that's because we've gotten money from various government ministries. The municipal taxes went up about 9.5% during that entire period, adding about 1 million shekels to the budget. So you understand that most of the money comes from export. סליחה, עודד, תרחיק טיפה. And with all that, so let's look at the projects that we have here in the Zayit, especially, and I think you will get a lot of answers to the questions that you asked. And then we'll also do another round to see what happens with the rest of the things. Just one more question. About the shades, there are some shades we're not trying to save money, but some of them got torn last winter, and we have to deal with insurance companies, and there are other parties that are involved sometimes until we can install. And sometimes, can you hear me now? And we're sorry that it's taking so long. And this is the map of the Zayit. And we will go over all the projects that we have here. We have more classes for the Mechina, for the girls, the expansion of the road, the northern exit, and then there is an access road to the Menorah Street, and Pitum Aktoret, the sewage station. We also have a northern part of Road 300 and the expansion of Pitum Aktoret Road and the pedestrian path that connects there with Kikar Gdalim and Rav Mona. And then there's the separation and the traffic islands on Rehov Matityahu and the swimming pool. So let's start with the swimming pool. We started to build it right here across the road. The elders of Efrat are smiling. They know that this is a plan that's been on the drawing table for about 25 years, and they talked about all kinds of alternatives, and not what was dreamt was connected to reality. The original plan spoke about a pool in the industrial area, and that was not connected to the zoning. And 9 years ago, we found this lot in the middle of the education area. And it is suitable to for the planning, and a lot of hours of planning were put into the planning of the pool. We met with focus groups, and we did a survey of needs of the residents, and a committee made up almost entirely of local residents who put in entire days to travel all over the counties to see what the most suitable model for Efrat would be and what would address the needs of the residents best. And the survey showed us very interesting findings. One of the most interesting things that came up was that 80% of the public in Efrat swim in mixed swimming pools. So when we built the financial plan, we realized that if we want to address the needs of those families that go to Tkora or to various hotels and other places that have swimming pools, we have to find a solution for those families that want to swim together as families. But this is, of course, a town that is mostly religious, and the modesty laws are an important element. So we went to Shoham, and there we saw a swimming pool. We saw a technology that looks relatively primitive, but was quite a breakthrough in planning of the pool for us. In Shoham, there is shutters that separate the outside pool from the inside pool, and then you can raise it in the summer, and then you can swim from the indoor pool to the outdoor pool. And that's where the planning came, to build a wider pool that is wider than normal pools. There will be shutters that come down and divide the pool seemingly into two separate pools. In other words, it will enable men and women to swim at the same time, of course, with separate showers and separate fitness rooms. And if you want to have family swimming, you can just lift up the shutter and have family swimming. It's an indoor pool. It's open on two sides completely, and partly on a third side to lawns all around. At the first stage, we're talking about a large pool with a cafeteria and a room that can be rented out for paramedical treatments, and a multi-purpose hall that we can divide it up with partitions. At the second stage, which is not yet planned, is another outdoor pool that can be a pool for teaching, for swimming lessons. And at the third stage is the construction of an auditorium with 400 seats that will take advantage of the natural amphitheater on the ground and will address the lack that we don't have an auditorium today, that we can't have performances in a nice hall yet, and all this is planned for here in this area. And the fact that it is in the educational area with the parking lots of the school makes it easier than putting it in a residential for the pool. We went through all the hurdles we did a lot of homework about how to finance it, and those who are familiar with BOT and RFI programs, we went through all these things, and ultimately what turned out that the simplest, easiest, and cheapest way to do it was to pay for it ourselves in the Moitza, but we needed to get all the authorization from the Ministry of the Interior, also for the loan and to finance the project. And some of the money will come from money that we saved in the past few years. Some will come from Mifal HaPais, and the vast majority will be from a loan that we took. And there is a plan in the multi-year budget how to repay the loan. Pools are not a money-making venture anywhere in Israel. The profit usually comes from the restaurants and other places in Ra'anana. They have a travel agency next to the pool and all kinds of other businesses that are near the pools. They are the profit makers, and that's why we have here also various commercial areas in order to make it profitable. In the coming weeks, there is a contractor that has been appointed, and the expectation is that within 2 years we'll be able to.
Some of the parking is right here, and that is already available today. That is the entrance to the Oded Revivi parking. Which is the רחוב there? That's an option. Do you have a name for it? No, it's not Matityahu. Matityahu is on top. There is a parking lot that is planned around the project over here as well as on the side. The parking lot that is being planned is not the only one. After Rehov Matityahu, you turn left towards Orot Yehuda, and that is where the parking lot is planned. But so long the auditorium is not built, there is a lot of parking lot. The minute we do build the auditorium, we'll have to think about more slots. But there are other places that we did prepare. It actually begins from the kindergartens on top all the way down, and the parking lot on the upper level is part of the parking lot that can also be used by people going to the pool. But absolutely, we have taken the parking lots into account, and we learned a lot from Alon Shvut.
There's no parking in Alon Shvut, and how many parking spaces are we going to have here?
So I'm saying again, we learned a lot from the Alon Shvut story. As far as I'm concerned, that is an example to be learned, meaning not to do as they did, because they had a problem with the pool, and we want us to have enough parking lots throughout the day so that people could come and actually park and swim. And the keys to the parking lot, again, will be taken into account by engineers and architects. I don't remember the numbers now. I don't want to just throw out a number. Do you remember the numbers? But I think generally speaking, all the parking slots for the pool, you can't see them on the slide. They will be built in the framework of the whole pool plan. And again, they'll give a solution. Whoever will come and swim will have a space. What's happening in Alon Shvut, again, that's an example how one shouldn't behave and shouldn't conduct himself. I can't really hear. We must remember that people are living here as well. And if you, again, building massively, you're building towers, you're building pools, the residents don't have place. It's already very crowded. Do you take that into account? Okay, you know what? I keep hearing this comment time and time again in different formulations. But beyond that agricultural farm, besides that farm, everything that we'll be talking of this evening appears in the Zayit plans, and it's been there for about 20 years at least, except for the agricultural farm. Everything that I'm going to mention this evening is in the plans of the Zayit neighborhood. It's been there for 20 years already. Sorry, sir. What, you bet you added another 70 units? But that wasn't in the original plan, though. I know the plan, but that's just not there yet. But you have approved it. I haven't approved anything yet. You can say a lot of things about me. How could you say you haven't approved it? Because if you were to read the protocol, you would understand what happened during our discussion. But Sima, I don't want to argue with you. I'm going to get to the project as far as also the shopping center is concerned. But let me just say this again. Everything that is happening today in the Zayit, including the height of the buildings and the number of units, everything is according to plans that were approved during Adochi month's time in 1994, where the great, again, changes took place.
There's not enough room right now, and we're adding hundreds more people there for your car.
Okay, I heard what you said. It's not good.
We can't move in the morning. We can't move. We cannot get our kids to school on time.
During Yigal's time, we actually rode our bikes. Sorry, I can't hear the people from the audience.
It's so simple.
Oh my God.
Space to read and to drive our kids to school. And we don't have that opportunity. So everybody starts their day off in a bad mood because everyone's driving like crazy people. Because you can't move. And now we're adding more with not enough parking. And one more thing before you answer, can you please ask the truck drivers not to drive in the neighborhood from 7:45 in the morning until 8:15 in the morning. We cannot move. I'm begging you, Oded, come tomorrow morning at 7:45 and stand in front of a road in Sion Bano. I cannot let Auntie time my 6-year-old walk safely because I can't move, because I have people on the left and the right, and the trucks just ask them, Bill, I'm so proud to live in Efrat, and Bill, but let me get my children to school. Just ask them not to come for that half an hour. You're going to stop so many people's aggravation.
You know, when one builds a city, there is a plan, an open plan. It's called the open plan, city plan. And there are rules how you're supposed to build the city, how you're not supposed to build the city. In the urban planning, the urban plan is actually set by different authorities, state authorities, and they do so in order to exploit the lands as best as possible. We said in many different in Israel. At the end of the day, we all understand that the state of Israel does not have too many lands, and we have to utilize it in the best possible way for the benefit of the state. Again, I'm just telling you what's happening. In the site, the plans, again, that were planned, again, that we're talking of, were planned 20 years ago. Of course, there are gaps. I'm not arguing with that. There's no argument that, again, the number of cars per family have increased, not only in Efrat, in Jerusalem as well, in Tel Aviv, more cars per family. And if you don't read newspapers, you'll see, the increase in terms of car numbers. You suddenly see the new license plates, and there are now 8 digits in the license plates, so you understand how many new cars are on the roads now. Now, in the urban plans, they actually set what are the borders, what width for each road is required. And I'm not sure, and I don't know. Would you like to hear my reply? I am listening. I don't know how to take, lots of land, and people have built in homes and they paid full money for it, and how to again create more parking spaces. By the way, before they built, we were able to again increase the places for parking because the Tamar neighborhoods were planned in the 90s. They started building it in 2017. We could still rectify the situation. We were still able to put in more parking spaces. But the state of Israel, you know what? Not the state of Israel. The residents of Zayit had an interest for them to finish completing building all the buildings in Zayit, because let me just remind you that again in 2008, when I was elected in the Zayit Shemen Road, there was no sidewalk on Yehudi Street, there was no park. And above Yehudit Street, there wasn't that big park because the Ministry of Housing said something very simple. Again, they weren't able to market all the plots. We did not get the income for the development of all for Zayit. That is why we will not be developing Zayit. And it just remained as a building site for more than 15 years, without sidewalks, without playgrounds, without gardening, and without those things that were lacking. And that is why there was an interest, first and foremost, for the residents of Zayit, so that the Ministry of Housing will finish selling all the different lots of land, different plots, so that they can develop it. So all the parks that we have between the Rakat and Khefziba area is a park that was built now in the last 2 years. And why? Because they finished marketing all the plots of land and all the sidewalks that we did. It was because we understood it was a safety issue. They built sidewalk on the one hand, they didn't build a sidewalk on the other side. And that is why the story of, again, not enough parking spaces, unfortunately, of course, I mean, it hurts everybody. Wherever we can create more parking spaces, we do so. In Sderot David HaMelech, we added, in Hagefen, we added parking spaces. In Ezra, we added more parking spaces. We're now adding a few in Peter Maktoret Street, wherever we can. And if you have ideas where we can create more parking spaces, we do so. Also in Zayit Shemen, by the way, you can park on the sidewalk. Why? Because we wanted to create more parking spaces. And again, I can't promise anything. Again, I can't promise things that I cannot do. So the request not to build homes, I mean, I'm kind of raising an eyebrow because in 2008, I was asked that I would do everything that they'll be building in Efrat. And now today there are residents in Efrat that are telling me there's too much building going on. So I'm saying now, the building rate, again, is not my decision. It also is subject to parliament resolutions, the government resolutions, and the United States. And we have to see how we can cope with the distress of parking spaces. But to come and say we want more parking spaces without bringing solutions where it's going to happen, then, okay, maybe it'll bring you a round of applause, but it won't create more parking spaces. The problem is not only the parking, but the synagogues. Sorry, I cannot hear her. But even chairs in the different shuls, there's not enough spaces. Things are ruined. It's not only spaces; it's everything. It's shuls and also sorts of institutes. For example, in Asechayil. I'm pretty new here in Efrat and in Gush Etzion, and I'm very proud to live here. It's wonderful. And the population is wonderful. But the feeling is that it's very, very crowded. And of course, it's blessed that it's so crowded and so populated, but still, you don't have education department, engineering department. We keep coming across situations where suddenly they start building things like a mechina. And again, things are not compatible, like trucks, driving around when it's certain hours. It seems like people are not really cooperating one with another. I'm sorry, I cannot hear them. We don't like, complaining because it is it's a blessed area and we're very happy. Okay, that's why we're here. We want to hear you. I just want you to understand every day about between 1,000 and 1,300 workers come into Efrat on a daily basis. Because we're starting to build a lot of infrastructure in the northern entrance that we initiated, the transition of the workers into the Dagan. We brought them through the Dagan, so long as it was relevant. Now we're going to have new infrastructure work in the northern entrance. And again, the demand is to close that entire entrance for 3 months. That is the scope of work that will take place there. We're trying to find solutions that it won't take place. But in what will happen in that northern entrance, it's just not enough. Now, 1,300 workers, laborers that come in with trucks, and different loads that come in. And again, the department, our security has only, two patrol cars. Can you imagine that between 7:45 and 8:15 every morning there will be no trucks coming in? So we'll try to take into account that they won't disrupt the pedestrians and where there are schools. But again, I cannot promise that between 7:45 and 7:45 and 8:15. Just a minute. I heard what you said. But if there are more workers that are coming through Zayit when the kids are going to school, shouldn't we be talking to the security officer? Sorry, cannot hear them. Sienna, if you want to increase the security budget, you don't have to convince me. It's not that I can suddenly have 4 patrol cars, because we all pay the security budget. Okay, and we negotiate for every shekel with the Ministry of Defense, and they have to approve the security need for everything that we do, for every single expense. And even at the moment, security is something very shaky, because one of the members of Knesset actually want to cancel the state participation because of some sort of a fight within Ma'ale Adumim. So again, some people may cry over it, some may agree, but again, the Ministry of Interior, because of that member of Knesset, they said as follows: let the military safeguard everything. But you understand that the IDF cannot provide all the security expenses that take place here and all that is needed. But let's move on. The story of the shuls, the synagogues. It's like a bleeding wound, I agree. But you know what? Let's just place the facts on the table, shall we? In all the neighborhoods in Efrat, the last shul that was built in a dekel, although in a Zayit, the Mishkan Tzipora was built, but I'm talking about dekel Ma'arav. Again, people will think those shuls were the residents. They built the shuls. The residents came, and the council allocated land, and the residents built the shul. And in Zayit, we haven't been able for 10 years. And there have been initiatives, by the way. There were groups that came and suggested and put in proposals, and we were not able to build new shuls. Now what happens at the end? There's more and more burden, there's more load. But again, there are plots for shuls allocated for synagogues. But I imagine that in some places a lot of renters, and they're not able to bring the residents to contribute, to donate. The local council has never built a shul. We don't have budgets to build shuls. It is true that we allocate new buildings, but in some of the fees that we take, it goes for the benefit of new synagogues. But we said, let's have an experiment in order to help the residents to initiate this project. Let's build the skeleton of the building. Now, we had an interest because we wanted to utilize the land properly in the best possible way. Next to Eshkol Ganem, we actually built a skeleton for a synagogue. At the end, the expenses were much higher than we had. And at the moment, we are negotiating. We're trying to, unite 2 congregations to enter that shul. Now, those 2 caravans in Hadekel Gimel, those are temporary shuls that they just placed on the street. I remember, as a young resident, I said, the head of the council, I feel sorry for him who has to deal with that. I didn't think it would be me. But we said it's a temporary solution. Now, it's on the outline of a road. It's chaval, because, 2 shuls together. I mean, we're talking about 40 families. With 40 families, you can't build 2 shuls today. And we have to evacuate them because soon there will be again a budget coming in from the Ministry of Housing to expand the road. And then people will tell me I'm getting rid of communities. But I have a synagogue in Pitom Akdoret. Also a caravan that was put up temporarily on a plot for Bnei Beitcha. Wasn't supposed to be a synagogue. And again, every time we go to the Ministry of Housing and we request, I said, what's with that shul that's over there? It's not supposed to be there. They always ask about it. there are plots meant for shuls. We also tried. Now they were so happy with where the shul is. We said, let's leave the shul here and we'll let the Ministry of Housing, we'll give them a different plot. So different neighbors came and said, no, we don't want the other plot to turn into Bnei Bet Chai. And then there was a discussion with the Tzipori shul. And we said, okay, let's turn it into a permanent building and it will be 2 stories. And then different neighbors came and said, no, we don't want a shul in front of our house. Now we put that caravan right here so that would ensure that there won't, build higher buildings in front of us. So you are right. However, there are certain plots that are available in Zayit where we can build shuls. And we have money allocated for public buildings and for shuls. We'd be happy to give it, and the engineer of the council would be happy to promote the building of shuls. Where is he? And maybe we can try and, negotiate between little communities and every few families that, have certain plans. Why can't we unite? Because we need a shul. You don't have to convince me. There are other topics as well. We're talking about schools. We're talking about kindergartens. We talk about water pressure on Fridays, problems with the sewage system. There are so many things that residents don't always see. But as far as they are concerned, and by the way, as far as Pitom Aktoret goes, we know exactly what's happening. It's because of, again, different units. People have divided up their apartments, and look at the cars. Some are parking, closed parking have turned into apartments that people have closed off. A lot of load on the system. So just to explain this to you, what people are renting out, the parking lots that they've closed. It's not even hidden. You know what? People just do it in open daylight. So then people are saying, why don't you enforce the law? Okay, so the council decided that it will, start implementing the law with the new units. So we started with that with it again. What's happening over there? So again, residents are placing pressure. And then they said, we also want this. We also want to rent out units to young families. And then I come as the head of the council, and everyone perceives me as a very cool man. But I say to them, but we've learned from experience. We don't want there to be too much burden and load on the infrastructure. And then again, fights break out once again. So these are the facts as far as the story is concerned. Before you said that families manage their budgets, and then the budget, family knows how to manage its own budget, what to buy, what not to. But I can also be creative with my budget. And the problem of parking, I have no problem with that. To bring in a supervisor and to give fines, for people that just for nothing because they have nowhere to park, I have a problem with that. So you said, okay, come up with proposal, come up with suggestions. We came up with 2 proposals, I think it was. What can we do with it at Sherman Street? Nothing happened. We submitted our proposal. We got no response from anybody. Let me just end, if I may. I don't agree with what was said. I think the more people will come, if that is our problems, that is great. We want as many people to come. There were times when people were not able to come and live here. And it's wonderful that we are building, and it's great. And even all those who've been living here from the age of 4, like myself, I'm willing to take it all in. But there are ways of being creative, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. I'd be happy again to take your suggestion again about your street. But let me just say, wherever residents have given in proposals and ideas of how to create more parking spaces, we were happy to do so. Sometimes, again, we weren't able to do it quickly enough, but if you have more ideas, I'd be happy to implement them. Let's just move forward. About the water pressure situation, can you maybe expand on that? Let's talk about the water pressure. Let me just give you a few facts, okay? There's a huge gap in what was planned. The park that was planned on Zayit, the original plan talked about a water tower within that area. And if you recall the construction stage, there were some residents that took part and wanted to draw our attention in the council meetings, and they organized a petition. They were surprised to see that as far as we were concerned, we had actually, finalized the matters with the Ministry of Housing before they even thought of raising the problem. And again, we're supposed to be building a new water tower in what we call the Khushat Pazit, the Pazit forest above the Zayit next to Oded Banot on top, where we bring groups to see the view, if you know what I mean. So the achievement with the Ministry of Housing was that we were supposed to get that land of that little forest, the woods. It wasn't state lands. But again, we were supposed to build the water tower in the middle of the park, in the middle of the forest, on condition that we would be providing the necessary documents before construction began. Fortunately for us, we were able to bring documents that were sufficient at the time. Unfortunately, the document that we have is not good enough to actually build the water tower right now. We're trying to promote the issue, but the minute that we get the final approval, we will build a water tower for the entire, the whole issue of Efrat, so that nobody will suffer from low water pressure.
The budget already exists for it. Is it a question of the amount of water? Is that what it's dependent on the rate of the filling of the water pool? If the people of Zayit get water from Hatena, we understand that it takes a long time to get there, and it has to go through a lot of water pipes, and it takes much longer to fill up, and you're at the bottom of the food chain, unfortunately, so you get the least pressure. The additional problem of Orot Etzion Girls' School, there's going to be a water pool built at 900, a reservoir at 900 meters high, 935 meters, and the other one 800 and something, so there'll be a drop of 100 meters, so the water will come at much higher pressure. The budget, I think next week, there's going to be a breakthrough with that. There will be... What about the stations for picking up people? I'm sorry, I can't hear him. They did a tour of the whole area. The problem, that was in Rosh Hashanah when we did it, but it wasn't the past Rosh Hashanah, it was the one before that. There's the problem of snow and rain. It's bus stops. There are bus stops in places where there's no one, and the places where you need them, there aren't enough. Okay. Tell us specific locations. The whole area of Zayit is... I'm sorry, I can't hear him. He's got his... There's a bus stop in the middle of Bitumak Dorot near the Makoret, about halfway down. And there's a bus stop. There's a stop. There's just a sign, but there's no shelter. Okay, we have quite a few new bus stops in the past few months. We'll do another around to see where we need to do more. It's much easier to do these things this year, not 2 years ago, when we didn't have the construction, we didn't have the development budget. Perhaps there are things that you haven't reminded me for the past year and a half, and so I forgot. But tell Moshe the details, and I will be happy to take care of it. What do we have here? Pitum Aktoret. So we have a situation here because of the density of the cars, almost all day people park on both sides of the road, and this doesn't make it possible for two cars to travel at the same time, certainly not buses. So we're getting involved here in work where we're going to expand this area right here where the cars are unable to pass, and to widen the road and create more parking spaces, and that should address that issue of the traffic on Potomac Torret, and that's in the coming weeks. We have one contractor that won the tender for completing all the development works, which is this matter, and the pool, and the bumpers, and you talk about the trucks from 7:45 to 8:15. We don't have control over the contractor or where he works on which days, so I can't tell you when he starts and when he finishes. We saw him working on a number of places simultaneously. He starts in one place and continues in another place. We'll get to the school in a moment. That's a different contractor. I just got the minutes of that meeting where you said you didn't authorize the 70. I'll get to that. I think it's a burning issue. When will you get to it? This evening. I'm not going anywhere. There are three very, very important. There's the 70 units, the Tzimmeres, and the factory. Yes, that too. And the 18 stories, the additional buildings. I'll get to everything. Not going home without taking care of everything. I can't. We didn't write factory, we wrote plant. What's the difference? Explain it to me afterwards in English. Just be precise. Matityahu HaKohen Street. We're talking about along the entire road, about 8 or 9 bumps. In order not to have the bumps at the turns, there should be separation, and that should create this safety issue. That should take care of the safety issue there. I know we spoke about this a year ago and it didn't happen. This is budget from the Ministry of Housing after the money is supposed to be part of the budget for the contractor who's working now. You said that the swimming pool will come from the budget of the Moitza. I said there's money that we saved, money we got from Mifal HaPayis. So when you're talking about the swimming pool, it's a very nice thing, but it's not absolutely a necessity. But the safety bumps are an absolute necessity. It's been almost a year already. So if I have to choose between a swimming pool and safety, I would choose the road humps. That's why we have the members of the Moitza, and they meet and discuss the budget. And very often we have to postpone a project, even if it's more necessary in terms of priorities, because we know that we will be able to get outside funding for it than to waste the little money that we have in the Moitza. Not all the money, unlike what was said here, that it's like a household, like household funds. It's not all money is available to the same extent. The money we get from the housing ministry is earmarked. I can't use that money for something else. How much does it cost to do road humps? I can't open up the whole budget for you right now. Is it very expensive? Is it cheap? The argument is not relevant right now. If you want to argue about, I can explain why we haven't done it for a whole year. And I'm explaining that part of that street was still being under construction. We saw in Dagan where they learned from Tamar, because in Tamar they completed all the sidewalks and all the infrastructure structures, and hadn't finished building all the lots. And now the construction workers are coming there, and they're damaging the what was prepared there. So yes, we may have been able to find the money last year, but it would have been destroyed during the year with the construction. We have a contractor working, and in the end, you'll see the local council is not like a private household where you say, I want this, and I do it. We have to bring the budget, we have to follow planning procedures, we have to publish tenders, and I hope we will see those things very, very soon.
We're talking about parking on Mateo Cohen. When I drive up from Pitum HaTorah, sorry, I can't say in Hebrew, but driving from Pitum HaTorah up Mateo through the village, around the turns and everything, there are spaces for cars to park that were made, right, with bricks, but the rest of the road is not red and white. So what happens is the people who live in front of those houses park in front of their houses, which forces cars to drive in the opposite lane. I'm afraid to drive up that street because there are always cars coming in the opposite lane. I watch the buses from my house going down the block in the opposite lane. It's really scary. It's really scary.
Okay, I'm not familiar with the specific event you're talking about. Matidyahu Cohen Street is in a transition stage from a construction site to a proper street. We'll tour the street and we'll see if we can do something with the red and white parking business. And last week, traffic tickets were written, and not all the residents follow some of them, even though there's a parking lot not far away, they insist on parking right next to the houses, even though it's not safe. The story of the Bnei Akiva Sniff in Zayit, we're working on the access road from Matidyahu HaKohen Street so that emergency vehicles can also get there, and so that parents who want to bring their children there can come there. And it's not supposed to be a regular traffic street, but with too much traffic, but it does enable access of emergency vehicles and parents dropping off their children. There's also a pedestrian path, and there's also a plan. There is a sidewalk, and there is a narrow road there at present. At this stage of the construction, there are limitations on some of the traffic there. There was a complaint that dirt was from a farm was poured there, and as soon as we realized that this was creating problems, we immediately put a stop to it. But a lot of the things that happen around the farm are part of the attempt to use lands that no one else is using, and that's why the dirt was dumped there. The school, Oded Revivi boys, and the building of the Mechina classes. This school has gone through a number of different school because it was impossible to get money from the Ministry of Education because they wanted to split classes and they wanted to have smaller classes, and so the school was built in stages. After we completed the removal of the Gush Etzion kids from Oded Revivi Efrat, the idea of having the kids from the Mechina in the same building of the school in order to connect the Mechina classes with the younger students. At the first stage, they were in the caravans that were in the yard, which in the past was used for Mishkan Tzipora. At the same time, the Moitza submitted a request to get budgeting from the Ministry of Education to build kindergartens there. The budgeting for the kindergartens came after the old building of Mishkan Tzipora was declared unsafe, and so we were forced to destroy it. And the lot where the kindergarten classes are being built is a lot that from the outset was planned for a school. About 15 years ago, there was an initiative to build a gymnasium there, and in the past there was opposition on the part of the neighbors, and the neighbors managed to convince the Moitza to move the gymnasium from there, and it was built closer to the lot 140 in a smaller building with no seats in consideration of the opposition on the part of the neighbors at that time. As I said, the lot was intended for public buildings, and when we saw that we needed these classes, and the classes were planted on this lot, and a request for budgeting was submitted to the Ministry of Education. All those who claim that they didn't know, didn't hear, I believe them, but there are those who did hear and did see and even submitted oppositions, which in terms of the Moitza went on for about 2 years, and in the local committee, and then in the including representation by an attorney. Ultimately, the oppositions were rejected, and the tender was published, and they started to build the classes. In total, the building, as you can see here, you can see the basketball field, and the building is on the red area. It's a 2-story building. One will be on the floor at the same level as the basketball field, and one will be lower, and the yards will be terraced. One will be on the level of the basketball field, and the other yard will be more or less at the level of the access, or even lower than the access path. In terms of the yard of the school, as soon as the Mechinah classes get out of the Matnas building where we moved them when we destroyed the caravan, the existing yard for the kindergarten classes will be opened for the benefit of the school, and so there will be an exchange of yards, and the building of the Mechinah classes that's being used today will be able to be returned for the use of the Matnas, and the Matnas will have a place to hold its activities. We'll talk about the additional houses in Pitom Aktonet and the planning to build a matnas, an additional matnas building. It's not planned right now for the neighborhood, but we have the classes which in the past were the parquet room, and the other classes there was a daycare center and art rooms, and we hope that we will be able to renew that activity as soon as the Mechinah classes move into their new home. I would like to ask that when you start such projects that you inform everyone. The Matnas didn't know about this. I'm not arguing with you, Tziona. It can be done when you just have to ask. We didn't receive any notice about it. We did an investigation into the event. We spoke to the administration of the school and the Atmas, and everyone knew this event was going to happen. And then on the day the tractor arrived, apparently not everyone remembered that it was going to happen. I don't want to argue with you. There was a sign up 2 years ago. We're trying. We understand where we need to improve from every event with residents. We learn and we draw conclusions. And you know that as much as we try, there's always room for more improvement. And regarding this story, you asked the administration of the school. They said we asked them, why didn't you tell the parents? And they said we kept hearing for 3 years that it was going to happen. We didn't believe it was actually going to happen.
Oded, two questions. Number one, how safe do you think it is for 700 young girls to be in a school where there are a lot of Arab workers coming in the next 9 months during term time? And would you want your 8-year-old daughter, if you had one, to be in the school there with random Arab workers running in and out the whole time? No, excuse me. I'm asking a question, please. Okay.
בנייה באפרת
Construction in Efrat is not something extraordinary. The rules regarding every construction site is the army. They open the site and they close the site. They determine how many guards there should be at the site, what are the security arrangements, and that's what we have.
Sorry, no, that's not right.
I'm sorry.
I've got 3 daughters in the school, and I'm frankly scared about them. One of them was told off because she walked back from the playground to the classroom at the wrong time and apparently put herself into danger. She should not be put into danger where she can walk back from the playground. Well, she's in danger. There should be a system. I'm sorry. It's up to you, Oded, to make sure that it's perfectly safe for 700 girls to be in that school. And if anything happens to them, I hold you personally responsible.
Thank you.
Generally speaking, we work according to the instructions of the army. The army determined what the procedures are and the number of guards that are required.
Where else in the whole of Israel do 700 girls, Israeli girls, get that close to Palestinian Arabs? Please.
You're invited to any other construction site. It just so happens that we did a tour in the city of Ramat Gan. Was it Ramat Gan? We were in Ramat Gan. And at that time, we were dealing with the construction of the shopping center next to the kindergartens. And we told them about the number of complaints we had from residents and the lack of feeling of security and safety on the part of parents regarding the construction of the shopping center near the kindergartens. And the mayor of Ramat Gan laughed. And I said, why are you laughing? I said, you can come to Ramat Gan, Tama 80, where everybody's building now near kindergartens. It's all private contractors, and no one even asks. When you have one kindergarten like that, I have them all over the city. And they put up. There's in newspaper Besheva, they had a story about throwing stones at a construction site in Tel Aviv, and they put in a picture of a construction site in Efrat. Ultimately, in Judea and Samaria, unlike Ramat Gan, the army is deeply involved, and the instructions from the army how to secure the building site, and we work according to those instructions. The building area is isolated and separated, and the workers don't come in through the same entrance as the children, and any encounter between the girls and the workers is avoided. And if things happen that aren't planned, then you have to call the security department and submit a complaint. Can we talk about the shopping center? We'd like to hear about that. That's what we've come here. I wanted to ask what time the workers come in. I can't give you the answer to that. There shouldn't be any encounter between the construction workers and the girls. The workers use the back entrance towards Rachaliveni, and they don't use the main entrance where the girls go. These classes are intended for the kids who are in the Mechina today, and the area is supposed to be returned where the Mechina is. Will go back to the use of the matnas. Today the Mechinot are in the ground floor of the building. It was built by the Ministry of Housing for the matnas, and the school was built above it. I understand that everything is according to what the army decides, but perhaps the Moetzah can add guards just to go the extra mile. It would really improve the feeling of safety. Although the army decides an X number of guards, perhaps we'll put X plus 1, so we'll feel safer about our kids being there. I hear what you're saying. I wish I could say yes. Anyone who's involved in what happens with security in schools in Israel, there is a constantly struggle over whether security guards in schools should be declared a prioritized profession. There aren't enough security guards for schools. We had the same problem in Efrat, where in 2006 they closed the list of schools that are entitled to security guards, and schools that were not built until 2006 or didn't have security guards until 2006 weren't entitled to a security guard. And that's the case for the children in Matityahu HaKohen Street. The Ministry of Education can build a booth for the guard and put in an air conditioner for the guard, but they don't bring in a guard. And their budget, my security budget is very limited, so I can't supplement that. We're trying to see how we can reinforce the guarding, but I can't tell you right now how it can be done. Let's move on. Two small things that are going to happen. This is Zerubbabel Street. From Zerubbabel Street up to the sewage plant, we are going to have separation between the lanes, and there will also be a bike lane and a pedestrian path. And we're doing the same thing at the section northward, from the sewage plant northward. The entrance to the Dagan neighborhood and Tamar neighborhood both are going to be changed. Dagan will be at its current location, and Tamar, you have to cross over, so the entrance is going to be a little more to the north. The entire northern entrance, there's work within a month. The works are going to start, and the entire northern entrance is going to be lowered about a meter and a half. In other words, you won't be able to use it, and we're trying to create a situation where we'll be able to enter Dagan and exit from Dagan without stopping all the traffic into the entrance, the northern entrance. But it's not safe right now. If you turn left from Dagan to Efrat, you have to cross a white line, and all these works are supposed to occur in the coming months, including the widening of the road, and then we'll have a completely different reality in terms of safety. Beyond the northern entrance, so two things are going to happen. The original plan was not to enter Efrat from there. The additional plan was that the separation fence would be completed, and if you can imagine, we have the northern Efrat junction, and there, from a diagonal line, they're supposed to come to the contours of Tamar and more or less connect where the car wash is, and then cross into Dagan. The idea was the moment they would finish the security fence, they would pave a road parallel to it. And now there's been a government decision not to complete the fence, and since the decision was made for security reasons, you cannot build a road that is not for security reasons rather than and for civil reasons, so they can't take the land for that. So we're trying to do some kind of traffic over there and improve so that we can move the traffic more efficiently. There is an opinion of Avichai Mandelblit, the Attorney General, where he will perhaps allow the use of a road that is only for Jews, which in the past did not go through the High Court of Justice. We're hoping that we'll be able to find a solution there. I'm sorry, I can't hear her. There are going to be bus stops at the entrance to Dagan and Tamar, and all those who are filming now, the picture is just for simulation purposes, only for simulation purposes, only for simulation purposes. This is only a simulation. 20 more.
Wow,
There are no cars on the road. Amazing.
Wow.
I'll get to the second entrance to Zayit in a moment. This picture I'm sorry, I can't hear her. I'm sorry, I can't hear her. First of all, thank you. As I said, this picture is just an illustration because it's not exactly the plan that we have on the drawing table. I just give you a little background before I show you the plan that is on the drawing table. This area is called the Mar area, which is the urban center. We talked about the urban building plan. We said that Efrat is supposed to have 30,000 residents, and so it needs a shopping center that addresses the needs of the local residents. But because it was marked twice unsuccessfully at times when there were building freezes, it was convenient for Barak and others to market this area because it talked about 5,000 meters of commerce and 5,000 meters of offices and 5,000 building units, and twice the tender failed. This is opposite Orot Etzion Banot. This is the traffic circle that seemingly exists today. This is the entrance to Ben Shemen, and this is the area that goes up. I'll show you on the map in a moment. The second time the tender failed, we played with the number of 40, and the first 40 building units that were sold because of this failure. And I went to the Minister of Defense and I said, instead of the 40 here, give me 40. And they didn't notice that the additional unit was in Dagan, and the first 40 units in Dagan were sold because of this failure twice. The reason the tender failed twice was that the housing ministry works as a closed unit. It takes a neighborhood, it calculates how much the development of the neighborhood should call the water, sewage, parking, streets, and so on. Everything the housing ministry has to provide, it divides it up by the number of housing units, and then it determines the amount it wants to get for each lot. Because in Zayit has a history of a lot of trials and tribulations of many, many years. There are people here who remember what happened back in the day in Zayit. There was kind of a budget hole of debts, and the housing ministry said, here we have a deficit of 30 million shekels. And the entire 30 million shekels, it dropped on this particular lot. And when it decided the price tag, twice no contractor was willing to take it on. When the Ministry of Housing realized that this was problematic, it wanted the money in order to finish the infrastructures, but on the other hand, no contractor was willing to build here. It introduced into the terms of the tender an addition that the developer can submit a request to change the urban building plan. And it introduced that additional term, and between the second and third tender, a contractor named Tzadik Pei came along and said he wanted to build there. He bought the lot and came to sit down with us. And he said, look, apartments, I understand, are sold in Efrat like hotcakes. The main parts of this lot are commerce and offices, and I don't see there's going to be a lot of demand for it. And I'm afraid that the project won't be able to get off the ground. So we asked him, what do you propose? And he said, and he presented an economic plan that said, in order for this project to be worthwhile for him, and so that it won't be a hole that he builds and he won't be able to move ahead. He wants to submit a request to change the urban building plan to increase from 40 to 110 building units, and it's not the local council of Efrat's authority to decide that. He presented this plan, which, generally speaking, if you look, you can see this is the office building. The housing units are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which at present he's only building 4 and 5. And he's presenting the plan for all 5 buildings with the shopping center and the office building. And the residential area, the offices and the commerce. It's a kind of a head-shaped in this area, if I remember correctly. And what he says is, look, the change in the urban building plan is not the authority of the local council. I want to submit a request for a building permit for 40 housing units, which is according to the current building plan, and a building permit for the 5,000 meters of shopping area, commerce, and the office buildings, another 5,000. And I want to add another 70 units. That is my request to change the urban building plan, not at the expense of the shopping area. I don't think it's at the expense of the shopping area, but I can't promise. I can't argue right now. I don't remember. I'm talking about the main numbers as I recall them. We're talking mainly about the transition from 40 to 110 housing units. And so he submitted the request in the Planning and Building Committee, and it has to submit a recommendation whether to do or not. When it got to the Planning and Building Committee in Efrat, they were concerned. They were concerned about the synagogue, about the kindergartens, and the parking issue. And of course, access roads, yes. And when we got to the discussion with the developer, we got the following answers. He is allocating from his area a lot that is intended for a synagogue. He is setting aside an area for kindergartens. We can get the money for the kindergartens from the Ministry of Education. For the kindergartens. Access roads, he has submitted expert opinions which are currently being examined by experts from the Ministry of Transportation. In the request to change the TABA, the urban building plan, it's based on what we can do, and he presented a parking plan that talks about 4 underground floors of parking. All the parking will be underground, using a key of 1 to 8 on the average. So we're talking about there'll be 188 parking places for the residential units, for the shopping and buildings, 188, and also parking for motorcycles and bicycles, and all this will be inside the lot. So he's starting to dig or excavate the parking area even before he got the permit to change the urban building plan. He's already building the parking as if he is assuming that they're going to authorize the new building plan. As far as we're concerned, all we are allowed to permit at this time is the 2 buildings that he's actually building now, and the shopping center and the office building. And the 3 additional buildings, which will be 66 residential units, the local building committee doesn't have the authorization to permit it yet. After the program has been deposited in Bet-El, anyone who wants to, they will be able to access the plan and they can submit oppositions. The building of the houses, of the construction units, most of the new houses, the 3 buildings that he's not building,
only the 2 are existing ones are across from Chefziba, and they don't go over the level of Chefziba. The other ones are the same height. Again, I don't know the exact sizes. I'm talking about the discussions that held. We said we wouldn't go above that height. The minute the plans will be submitted and approved, we'll be able to look at things more closely and see things in the most clear way. And you can object, by the way. You can submit objections always. Wait just a minute, Oded. No, Oded, I just want to, please, can you just on? Just a minute, he just wants to. That means that you basically recommended, or you didn't approve, but you recommended and you said it's okay as far as you're concerned. What about us? What about us? What about the neighborhood? Don't you think we should be asked whether we would like to see these changes, these expansions? This was an open discussion, Sima. The discussion was no surprise. I think we had so many representatives during the discussions where the council talked of this. No, during the first discussion, that was just a surprise. It wasn't part of the agenda. It just suddenly landed at our doorstep. And the second discussion was when we talked about, let me repeat it, Sima. No, the discussion that was by surprise was the second one where they asked for 10% alleviation. No, that was the second one. The building will take place whether we want it or not. Thing is, how will the council prepare itself for it? That's all. The first meeting, the first discussion was a long one. We had reps from Ministry of Housing, we had reps from the contractor, they presented all the plans.
It's a live video where you say it's recorded. It's recorded, you say it.
You didn't tell us in advance that the discussion will take place.
It's on Facebook Live.
You said that again. That was a surprise, expanding it by 180%, the building plan. You did not notify the residents that things would change as you are required to do by law. That happened also during the second discussion, and I raised it. You did not notify us in advance. You said it yourself. The Ministry of Housing came, those reps came. We did not know about it. We, the residents, were not notified. We understand, we know your legal approach, and you can use it with Mattel, and you can, of course, attack whatever you want to. But at the end of the day, we have to abide by directives that we are given, and how we. No, that's not you did not notify. You did not invite the residents to come over. Anyone did it? Does anyone know differently? Nobody knew of this. You are saying that I did not act in accordance with the law. So you are. What are you talking to me in legal language now? I didn't say you did something illegal. I said you did not invite the residents. That is all. You decided not to invite the residents to that discussion. The problem is as to what is happening at the moment and what will happen in the future. And again, what about what is happening in the morning and even in the evenings? No, leave the jams. You can also live in Tel Aviv and then stand 40 minutes in the jams. Why do we have it here? So let's talk about what is happening at the moment. Let's take a few steps back. Sorry, I cannot hear him. The part on the left side of the Ma'on. Maybe that could be parking spaces as well. There's no parking in the area at the moment. And I don't think we should wait 10 years. Again, the plot that you are talking of, there was a proposal to prepare and to utilize it for parking space, but again, it's drilling into rock. It's crazy expenses just to dig into that rock. If we had that budget, you're absolutely right, then we can use that area for parking spaces. But regarding parking spaces in general, I suggest, why don't you see what's happening in the streets in the area? It's true that in front of the school, almost always, all the parking spaces are not available. But if you turn a little to the right and turn into the left, when the school, during office hours, there are spaces there. We're always trying to improve. If there are specific comments for specific things, we'd be happy, again, to receive it from you, because we know it's not a simple event of suddenly building a rather big building in the center of a neighborhood. You know, I wish it would happen as in the Tamar. It would happen in Tamar because all the neighborhood is being built together. But in Zayit, just for political reasons only, 13 years nothing happened. And during those 13 years, half of the neighborhood, again, based itself and got used to living under certain conditions. And suddenly, because the other part of the neighborhood was suddenly, prepared and got ready for building, we found ourselves in a certain situation. So in Tamar, it went much more easily. Everything was built together. In Zayit, again, it's a problem. I cannot turn the wheel back. Why can't we turn the wheel back? Because 90% of Zayit are not interested in the project. Why don't we turn the wheel back? We are not interested. If we come as a group, let's say 90% of the residents object to this new construction. You have the right, I have the right, but I don't have that force to do anything about it. No, seriously now. So you can go to tell and just, we want to turn the wheel back. Because I think the project is an important one for Efrat. So what are you saying? So you want it? Yes. So if you want it, so what about us? So involve the residents. That's all I'm saying. There is a group of residents who's not interested in the project. There is a head of council here who was elected in a democratic process, and he can decide. Sorry, I cannot hear them all at once. I'm sorry, I cannot interpret for you. Too many Jews screaming. I don't think... I think the atmosphere here is really a negative one.
And there's one road in and one road out of the Zayit. And to stuff the Zayit fuller and more and more and more and more and more people, A, it's not safe, and B, it's very, very, it's not troublesome. All the touch
But again, we want to develop, don't we? As part of the development, new things about new residents come in. If I can just get your attention, please, everybody. Just two things, if I may. I'm really trying. I just want to say two things. First of all those who arrived in Efrat and they thought they're coming to a little yeshuv, then I'm sorry. But it's not Modi'in. I'm sorry. It's actually going to be like Modi'in because Efrat's plans really speak of just that. But Modi'in has huge roads, huge access roads, highways.
The land use plan is for 40 units. The land use plan for 40 units. The Shinui Tava is for an additional 70 units. If we keep the 40 units, I think I think what many of
זה לא מה
us
שיהפוך את אפרת למודיעין.
I think what many of us in this room are saying is that the additional 70 units is a fundamental change to our town that we do not want, and we are asking you to reconsider, as our representative, what this town looks like and what it's about.
תראו, מאוד פעם, דקה.
Just give me a minute, okay? If the building continues as it is, how are you preparing yourselves for a huge quantity of new people coming in? Can't hear her. That's what I'm interested. How do you deal with all the amounts of people coming in? I want to say two things. Again, the urban plans of Efrat, just like in 1983, we actually talked of a city of 30,000 people. Okay, that's just the general outline plans from 1983. Whoever came here after 1983 knew he was going to come to a city of 30,000 people. Knew he's coming to a Yishuv Irani, a city Yishuv, and they knew that the roads would be open here. There is no Vadat Klita, and people knew that this is like a city with a varied population, and what the exact quantities are, they keep changing. But we're talking about the Zayit now, but just let him finish. The council sat and deliberated and thought that changing, and that change between 40 and 110 in one project is not a fundamental change that will change the character of Efrat or will change the Zayit, the character of the Zayit neighborhood. Now why? Because I think we actually deliberated for over an hour, maybe 2 hours at the time, and we examined all the different options. We saw all the different data, and we understood that in order for us to be able to develop that center, and if you remember in 2013, the Zayit residents wanted to have a supermarket and a bank in the Zayit neighborhood. This cannot happen if you don't have residents, and you cannot have this if you don't have a shopping center. Now, if a franchisor comes and says, in order for me to be successful, I have to increase the number of residential units from 40 to 106, then again, it wasn't the end of the world. It didn't seem to us that it would be that significant in terms of characteristic of the neighborhood. Now, that's not the end of it. We are hearing all the different voices, and opinions. We're hearing your different claims and complaints and the different requests that have come up, and also the council will then submit this, and at the end, I, as the head of the council, I think this is what also the members of the council thought at the time. We have to see how we can create sources of income for the city, because I said at the beginning that all the municipal fees doesn't even get to 15% of the city's budget. You want more bus stops, you want more this and more of that. It's all legitimate, but you have to understand, how do we create income? So we started, building the industrial zone as well. So, and then in the south, people will say, oh, why should we have an industrial zone in the middle of Efrat? But what can we do? When we planned Efrat, they saw an overall picture of all the needs of the different residents, and there is a certain area that is allocated for an industrial zone. They've been trying to develop it for so many years. At the end of the day, the Ministry of Economy, at the end of the day, allocated a little plot, and the municipal fees is received from that industrial plot, under the TNA, by the way, not what I'm talking of here, will increase the income. For who? For the residents of Efrat, so that we'll be able to do more things in future. Those shopping centers, first of all, just a minute, the shopping centers, again, 4 or 5 years ago, there were empty shops. Okay, just historically speaking, the shopping centers of Efrat were supposed to give the response to the entire Gush Etzion area. But because between the year 2000 or 1999 to 2013, the population in Efrat was about 8,000 and did not increase. And in Gush Etzion at the time, the population doubled itself, and you couldn't actually buy in different Yeshuvim, and there weren't new Yeshuvims. Then the Gush Etzion area wanted to make changes in the UBP, in the urban building plan, and there was no shopping center at the Gush Etzion junction. And then they wanted to change the UBP, and why? Because there was a need for it. And by the way, we in Efrat objected because we said if we build our shopping center, maybe nobody will want to get there. So, Baruch Hashem, we have another 16,000 residents with these new plans, and the entrepreneur said that he knows how to make it into a successful shopping center. Now it will serve the residents, and now you're objecting? What about the Zimmers? I'll get to that. Just a minute. Here it is. I'm going to get to everything if you let me speak. I'm sorry, I really cannot hear him. I'm sorry, I cannot hear him. If you look at all, I think I heard him. I think he's talking about the fact that in all the Yeshuvim, in Yehuda and Shomron, they are now implementing saturated building with big residential towers. And I think it should be built. If we don't build, then everyone's going to get old, and there will be no new young people will come in. So let's look at the full half of the cup and not the empty half. I have two more topics to cover, but regarding the toilet, the promenade. This is the entrance to the Peter McTorrett Street, and these are the houses. We have the plot, you can see it's in blue. It's defined as the promenade, the Tayelet. Let me just explain what that is. On this promenade, there is that caravan, the Makolet. Just as a temporary solution, in 2008, when I was elected as the head of the council, the Mishkan Tzipora people who prayed there, that plot called 125 on the corner, Zayit Sherman Street and Yonatan Hashmonai, that's the one I'm talking of. We had asked that it would be allocated into a green plot. We went to the entrepreneur and we said we would like to sort of combine two plots. Because the corner of Mishkan Tzipora plot doesn't belong to the council, so we cannot develop it. It actually belongs to a private person, and it's supposed to be a shopping center. Now, we understood that there is no room to have a shopping center at that corner, so we said to the entrepreneur, you know what, we'll give you the plot. Okay, there's a Makolet there already. Let's change the plan, the urban building plan. And taking usually, again, certain plots, what they call round plots, it's very hard to change their allocation, but we got in a petition from Peter McTorrett residents that they objected to the fact that we would have a shopping center on the corner of Peter McTorrett. So the entrepreneur saw this and said, no, I'm not willing to give up on that plot 125, and that is why it is stuck. That is why the interest of Mishkan Tzipora looks as it does. And the Makolet is actually on a plot that is supposed to be something else. We're always trying to increase our income, and we want to turn again the council into something more attractive for the residents. Now, since there is a promenade, and it's very limited in terms of what you can do with it, so any change in the urban building plan. So again, let me just show you the plot. It's 9 dunams, and we want to change it, or at least we want to have 2 extra utilizations of this plot. Where the Makolet is, basically, we want to build some sort of a coffee shop or neighborhood cafe, and on the slopes, so that you actually won't be able to see it from on street level, we want to build 11 zimmers. All in all, we're talking about 9 dunams of land. All in land, the built area is again 2,000 square meters. That means none of these, we won't have any building that will be higher than 2 stories. And we thought that with the income that we were receiving from developing the coffee shops and the zimmers, we'll be able to build this promenade. And again, it will cost about 6-7 million shekels. We'll create a situation in which the neighborhood will have a nice view will create a situation in which there will be tzimmers and people want to come and have, bar mitzvahs or whatever over Shabbos, they can come. So, and we'll also have another little shopping center, and also municipal fees for shopping areas, for municipal or commercial areas is so much higher, and thus we create further income. Again, the problem with the Makolet is not the Makolet. He's actually, he's renting the caravan from the Ma'atzah, from the council. We never talked to him about evacuating him or anything. This is a change in the urban building plan. And again, we'll have to hear the objections and what the residents have to say. And then we can submit the change. And we also have to make sure that we'll be able to get the plot in order to build a promenade. There are a lot of question marks still up in the air. The ideas of the Tzimmers was to create some sort of a basis. We didn't even get to the stage of operating Tzimmers, but we thought it would be some sort of a social enterprise. It will be employment for young people and for civil society. But again, the idea is to create some sort of an income that will remain here at home and that will have, more money in our petty cash to realize all our dreams. Yes, there is parking. There is parking all along the promenade, yes.
It's not enough. They're going to be parking in front of my house, and I'm not going to have anywhere to park.
עוד פעם, יש מספיק מקומות חנייה שאפשר...
There are enough parking spaces that we can allocate as such along and on that road and in that little section between Pito Maktoret. Again, I never saw, by the way, cars ever parked on that other side of Pito Maktoret, ever. We're talking about 11 Tzimmers, that is all.
ומבנה של בית קפה
And I said a cafe, and again it's supposed to be about 20,000 square meters, that is all, but we don't need anything. We don't need anything. You know what, we can leave things as they are. But then you can ask, why is there no money?
Because I don't know why I need Simmery. I already live in a nice place. I don't want more strangers coming in. Let my children walk around by themselves at night. I don't want strangers in my neighborhood.
Okay, I heard you. I think differently. I think I'm sorry, I really cannot hear him. But what about that the contractor got another 80%? Then why doesn't, because you got an extra additional 80% units, why don't you ask the contractor to fund the building of the promenade? Some of the members of the committee before the current term in office didn't know anything about this plan. How could that be? And you approved and you already said to the contractor that you're allowing him to build another 80% in terms of the residential units. You can use your hands as much as you want to, but the plans were all there. The discussions were open. It wasn't done in secret. Okay, let's talk about the eastern slopes of the Zayit. What's your name, sir? Netanel. The Ministry of Housing and the State of Israel, keeps looking for lands to build further residents and units in order to be on par with the goals of the government. Now, the minute they finished marketing the Dagan and the Tamar, they looked at Efrat and they tried to see which lands are available. Of available land, what is available lands? It's basically lands that, again, is available for construction. The only lands that they found to be available is this area, that slope, which is on the east side of Pitom Haktoret. This is Pitom Haktoret. This is a Dagan on top. That's Tamar. And in our discussions with the Ministry of Housing, they basically came and said that they never looked at these slopes because the slopes are so steep that they thought that the development expenses would be such that it wouldn't be worthwhile even starting on such a project. Now, since the Tamar and Dagan were marketed already, we started looking at this stretch of land, and then the problems popped up. Now, the problems with this area is that for the first time, that is the security fence, the outline of the security fence, there are limitations of the seam line that we are not allowed to build from a certain distance from the security fence, even if the security fence is not built, and you're not allowed to build higher than the security fence. Another problem is that there are archaeological findings along the stretch from the Brechot Shlomo, Solomon's pools, and there were two main barriers of the seam line, as I said, the seam line directives and archaeological problems. Now, this whole story is a story that began, and it's an issue because the Ministry of Housing is looking for land to build further units in order to be able to supply the needs of people who want to live in the Jerusalem area. What we see over here is basically what they suggested. They went over 17 or 18 drafts, and they kept preparing more and more drafts. They bring it over to the Ministry of Defense to get approvals in terms of, again, the seam line and security fence directives, and in terms of archaeology. That's Pitom Haktoret that I'm pointing at, and that's for the first time in history that we are talking about another entrance to the Zayit neighborhood, an additional entrance that is going to be basically in this area over here, again, where that's the lowest point at the moment towards the northern area. There will be another entrance with, again, two-lane road, two-lane in each direction, and you'll see how it's going to work in just a minute. As to the water level, again, and the archaeology actually allows us for building, but again, we cannot build to a certain point the water flow. And it's going to be a little bigger than the running pathway in Jerusalem, and the road will be a little further apart. So if you're familiar with the history of those water streams, we are talking about, again, a decrease of 1 meter for every kilometer. Now, we said it's going to be the steepest neighborhood, but the plan at the end of the day says that it will actually be the flattest neighborhood. We're talking about a scale of something like 700 units with educational and public buildings, with a community center and other matnas, kindergartens, and all the public institutes that are needed for the neighborhood. And what we are missing in the front, and this was never planned before, is again protected building for the elderly. All the units that are Diur Mugan protected building are not supposed to be higher than the height of the buildings in Pitom Haktoret, and all the buildings are not supposed to be above the slopes in any case, because those are limitations proposed by the security fence in any case. So again, the planning is underway in the Ministry of Housing at the moment. It hasn't reached statutory status at the moment, but on top you can see Pitom Haktoret, and next to it you can see those four sort of teeth that are sticking out. That's the Diur Mugan for the elderly, the protected living. You can see the schools and the kindergartens. You can see another little shopping center, another sports auditorium, and a matnas, and you can see the buildings. This plan was given to Danesas about a year ago. We presented these, and not much has changed since then. They're still working on it in the Ministry of Housing. In terms of the council, also in terms of the state actually, this road that we talked of, that is actually has 2 lanes in each direction, that I mentioned, connects at the bottom to Matityahu HaKohen, And at the moment, again, it's a cul-de-sac. It's a dead-end street. But the point is that we'll get to this new neighborhood that is state lands. And one of the biggest limitations about Aitam was having that sequence, that succession in terms of lands. And then we got an approval that we can build an underground tunnel, and this road will lead us to a situation in which we'll be connected to Aitam. No, this is not Aitam. Here you can see, I think this is a little closer, you can see those four sort of teeth that I mentioned before, those little outlets in terms of that protected living for the elderly. You can see how they're supposed to look like. We're talking about buildings. You can see that they're on the slope of the mountain, and all the wadi underneath, and again all the soil and that we excavated is there in order to make it all flat, to level the area, so that we can have a baseball field, we have tennis courts, we have basketball courts, we have an amphitheater. That blue line, by the way, is that the water level that we talked of, the Amat Mayim. And then it connects all the way to the Dagan. This park is supposed to be funded by Ministry of Housing, and the Ministry of Housing, as we saw in Zayit, knows how to do this the minute that they market the units, the residential units. We're already building another baseball field, by the way, under the Tamar, and this will be an additional one. Why are there no different facilities in the Zayit? This all connects to the Zayit. No, but what about our neighborhood? We keep traveling, going to other neighborhoods. What about our neighborhood? Not 10 years from now, 15 years from now. What about now in our neighborhood? Sima, next to your house, there is the park that... Don't talk to me about that park, because my kid had to be injured in order for you to build that park. For 3.5 years, that park was stuck. Why? Where were you all that time? Nothing happened until we really had to, I don't know. How is this connected to your son's injury? For 3 weeks after he was injured, then they finished that park. Just a coincidence? It was a coincidence? There was no coincidence. And because of that, I started off that Facebook page, because of what happened to him. That the Ministry of Housing thought it would cost. Another 1 million shekels, and the Ministry of Housing and the State of Israel took them time to bring in another 1 million shekels. They had to go out on a new tender, and at the end of the day, we approved that park. That's all that happened. Wherever we could actually add more green areas, we did so, and we will do so. If you know further areas in Hazayit where you can actually prepare more green areas, I'll be the first one to hear about it. Please do. And I want to build water reservoirs as well. Then we can add it in the site, a basketball, a field, things that weren't planned in advance. I don't know how to evacuate homes, and our
you know how to add houses, but not green areas. You add houses and you don't add playgrounds. That's the point. You keep adding more and more and more houses, and then you say, but there's no room for anything else. Thank you. You're welcome. Can I ask you about Shar Eitam? I asked you what's happening next to Shar Eitam. There was when you're there, and we asked about it, and you said you didn't know what was happening there. After that, they left the whole area, and they put a concrete floor there. I went there to see today, and there's a metal fence there. Now I understand that this is an area that belonged to an Arab, and 2 Jewish people bought them, and they're doing playing around all kinds of games there to see who's the owner. I can show you pictures. I went there today, and they're digging into the ground to put in piles. What's happening? First of all, as far as I'm concerned, what I told you a year ago is still the case. It's beyond the jurisdiction of the Moitza. So who's building there? I don't know who's building there. I think I know, but I don't know it officially. Just as I said to you last time, it's the same answer now. It has to be taken care of by the civil administration. If you say that works continued there today, I'll go there with tomorrow with Moshe. We'll make sure that they'll stop. These are not works that have permits, but it's not part of the jurisdiction. They keep adding things. They're not doing anything. They have to destroy that entire concrete platform there. I can't destroy it because it's beyond my jurisdiction. I know it gets on your nerves. It annoys me also, but I can tell you, I have general knowledge. It's not official knowledge. My official knowledge relates to the land that is in the jurisdiction of the Moitza. There I'm responsible and I know what's happening in most cases. There it's outside the jurisdiction, and I know that there are Arabs, just as they open up car washes at the northern entrance, which by the way, all of which are illegal, okay? But I can't do anything against them, and that's something that has to be taken care of by the army and the civil administration. Here too, there's someone who thinks that if he opens a business next to Efrat, people from Efrat will come there and give him business. We understand that it bothers the neighbors. Every time we see activity that we go to the civil administration and ask them to take care of it. If you tell us that there's stuff going on there, we'll go to the civil administration and ask them to take care of it. I have a question. The exit from the Sharet Tam, there's about 25-30 meters until the road, the seam line road, and that seam line goes south, southern Efrat. Can't the Moitza complete the road in order to kind of reduce the pressure of the traffic? Because a lot of people are turning southward. I wish we could. It's connected to what I said earlier regarding the new entrance to Efrat. It's a road that was built for security reasons. It's a road that's forbidden to travel on it. The Arabs that travel on it are actually carrying out a traffic violation because it's not safe there. Anyone who enters there turns from Efrat, turns left to the security road. If there's a patrol car there, they'll get 1,000 shekel fine. It's not a road that has been authorized for travel. There are open sewers there. I can't permit traffic on that road. It's a dangerous road, both in terms of the curves and the slopes. We'll have to find a solution that's permitted. I'm sorry, I can't hear him. It's a little... I'm sorry, I can't hear him. That road can be built only. That road can only be built with this if this plan is implemented. In financial terms, it can only be built if this plan is implemented. Any road that is paved today when we're talking about widening the tunnel road and another bridge, why are we saying that the money is already in the public office? Because this is a road that is being built for Ramat Bet Shemesh. It's not for Gush Etzion at all. Because the tunnel road, doubling the width of the tunnel road and the additional bridge makes it two-way traffic in both directions for public and private transportation from Jerusalem to Beit Shemesh. At Tzomet El Hader, you go right and it's a four-lane road. It's not to continue to Gush Etzion. We managed to get them to continue it with 4 lanes up to Neve Daniel, but the money from El Hader to Neve Daniel, there's no money for that. We're working on that. From Jerusalem to Beit Shemesh, there is money, including the tunnels, including the bridge. Why? Because when the state of Israel sells land, just as I told you about Shkunat Zayit, it plans how much it needs in order to, it's a closed unit, as I said, closed economic unit. As soon as they go to marketing, then they'll build the road as well. This morning I had a meeting with Snabish. As far as he's concerned, this is one of the projects that he knows that as far as the PMO and the housing minister are at the top of the priorities, and that's helpful because it will lower it'll speed up the traffic going to and from Jerusalem. We're doing what we can. These are plans that we showed you just as we showed the plans in Daniel Sass's house in order to share what's going on with the residents. Tell you these are the things that are on the table. It hasn't reached the stage of oppositions yet, and when it reaches that stage, then anyone who wants to present an opposition can do so, and we'll study the situation and move on from there. And until then, you'll build 110 units. What the traffic advisor is saying that the 110 units are not going to make the big difference at the exit from Zayit. I have to tell you the truth. Most hours of the day, the exit is open. We have bottlenecked at the entrance and the exit to Zayit from 7:45 to 8:15 in the morning, and on Friday noon when it's very difficult. But ultimately, in every city, even in Modi'in, which was planned from A to Z, during the days when people drop off their kids and pick up their kids, there's traffic jams. So either you have to leave a little bit earlier or a little bit later, and you can't build the whole traffic situation and roads for a half an hour of a day. That's how roads are planned, for better or worse. You can, say a lot of things and get a lot of support and applause, but they're not going to make wider roads for half an hour a day. What do we need to do to get another road? You don't need to do anything. Perhaps not to present opposition, but if this plan is implemented, then there will be another entrance into the site. What about the 110? The 110 is not going to change with the extra lane. The addition of this project will bring us that extra road to the site. If everything goes as planned, it can be already under construction within 5 years. It's within 5 years. I'm sorry, I can't hear her. Because we know that another entrance to Zayit has never been planned. Here we have the advantage of another entrance, and it can happen if there is another building project. We're seeing now the results of the poor planning of the tunnel road all those years ago, and I can't hear what he's saying. There's too much noise. David HaMelech Road, I showed you earlier, the entire section in the northern area will be upgraded. There will be a discussion with experts in transportation to see what the right thing to do, to have 2 lanes in each direction. That's the original plan. There is a place, the only place where there isn't room is in the shopping center in Deco, where there was supposed to be a traffic island and to go in one direction on the west side and another direction on the right side. That wasn't possible. And today, transportation advisors and experts prefer to have more narrow roads, especially in places like Efrat, because of the understanding that we have houses and schools on the main road, and we don't want to have a situation where you have a 2-lane road where people are driving very fast inside a town. And the plan talks about safer sidewalks, bicycle trails, and separation between the 2 lanes. And in Deco, we did part of this plan. We saw there's a service road where you can travel freely, and there's another area that's supposed to be planned between Rachalimenu and
לכיכר ליד אורות עציון בנים.
the square
כל מעגלי התנועה
near the boys' school, and it's all been planned.
ולגבי הערה שלך לגבי כביש המנהרות,
And regarding the tunnel road,
אפשר להגיד היום שזה לא
you can say today that it wasn't planned properly. We see that when they pave Highway 6, after a few years they add another lane because there isn't always money when the road is first built to plan for 30 years ahead. The tunnel road was opened in 1994. If they meet the timetable, we're talking about another 5 years more or less. 2022. 28 years later, there's a situation where the road is doubled. The original plan was to double it eventually. I'm saying that we're working on a situation where it will be safer and there will be separation between the lanes. We're working from the southern entrance to Nitzan Square and then from Sderot Chalimenu Road to the northern entrance, and that every section involves budgets from the Ministry of Transport. I can't give an answer to all these things. I can't address all the 280,000 new cars that are on the road every year, and when the Ministry of Transport doesn't know how to give a proper service, we can plan where we can plan and to address maximum needs. Yes, there are traffic jams. We all see that. Nobody enjoys it, and I hope that those who are really responsible for transportation in the state of Israel will take it to heart. I wanted to ask you about the square that connects Rachalimenu and David Amelech. Children walk to school and back because they don't have buses, because it's too close. So how can a third grade kid get from school to home when the main junction is so busy? Is there any plan for the safety of the children? In the past, the girls' school was supposed to have the safety patrols, and it didn't work out. There's nothing, there's no police there, there's no... Okay, I can't give you an answer right now. If we have an idea, if you have an idea, we'd be very happy to put it into effect. Last night I emailed you. There are families on the Matityahu Cohen, the story of the parking there. That's a problem that can be solved. Talk to Moshe about it and tell him what you have in mind. We can talk about the problems with the electricity here in Zayit, especially last week on Friday night. There was a 2.5 hour blackout, and nobody called the electric company to let them know that there's an entire neighborhood without electricity. Nobody bothered to do anything about it. And it happens again and again, and we and our houses, it's not good for us, and it's not good for our children. How are you going to solve that problem? I have to admit, this is the first time I'm hearing about this. If the Moked is supposed to report to you, but we ourselves called the electric company, and they said, yeah, we see that there's no lights on in the neighborhood. And that's it. in Matijao, they didn't do anything. We called the Moked. And we ourselves called the electric company, and they sent somebody to fix it. But nobody from the Moitza or the electric company worries about it. We have to take care of this problem. And if we keep adding more and more houses, it's just going to get worse. Electricity is the electric company. When there's a problem, you call 103. It's not something the Moitza is supposed to take care of. We're talking about a whole neighborhood. We do try to help where we can, where there is a big problem and there's an added value to taking care of it. I have to tell you that I didn't know that there was a problem on Friday night. I can tell you I would have called 103 myself, and I suggest next time not just to tell them okay, but to let the city engineer's office know about it as well. Can't hear her. There are going to be more and more people living here. How is the Moitza preparing to give better services to the people so that the heads of the departments will give the right response in terms of the right discourse and in terms of how quickly they respond to get better services? It's a shame that you're asking it now when so many people have already left. There's always room for improvements. That's first of all. We always try to do better. Efrat, there isn't a week that other cities don't come to learn from us. Bet-El are coming tomorrow. They've come to us from Tel Aviv and from Karnei Shalom and Bnei Brak and Ma'ale Adumim and from Ariel. Really. There's people coming from Lavim, from the north, from the south, from all over Judea and Samaria. People, all other municipalities are always coming here to learn from us. We are one of the only councils in Israel that has a multi-year plan, a multi-year budget. There are very few cities that have activities and that has a work plan where every single resident can know where every shekel is going. And personnel, manpower, that's a challenge. The reform in the planning and construction doesn't apply in Judea and Samaria, so we can't hire better manpower in the engineering department. So we're very much lagging behind in that area because the law doesn't apply here. We're still in the old world of wage conditions. We don't determine that. With the last ruling of the Supreme Court regarding clearly, I understand. I'm just saying that ultimately there's a saying, certainly in 2008, when I was elected, we said, okay, let's replace all the department heads, we'll bring new people who will give better services. It's very easy to say that, but when you replace manpower, you have to know what your ability is to hire. We're constantly trying to hire good people. And it's very difficult because the wages are not attractive and people don't want to. So who wants to be a public servant where anybody can tell you what they think at any time? The matter of public service in Israel is a very challenging thing, but ultimately I think that here in Efrat we managed to get a lot done with the manpower that we have at our disposal. I don't have anybody in kindergarten this year, but next year I'll have twins in kindergarten. I'm worried about the overload that there is in a single coordinator who's in charge of 5 kindergartens. I have a lot of respect for her, really. We add staff. We've grown by almost 100 jobs in the Municipal. I understand. We're aware of the situation. The engineering department has grown. The planning department has grown. We are very much aware of how things stand, but we have to understand that the increase in income and revenue is not equal to the expenditures when you have more people. From what I've encountered when I needed help, what got things done was writing to you on Facebook in public. So, is there another way? Yes, of course there is. Anyone who thinks that I can't keep track of all the WhatsApp and Facebook groups and every time someone tags me that I really can see it and follow it, then I think they're attributing superpowers to me. You can write to me personally. Ultimately, whenever I get a request, I give it to the person who's in charge. We have quite a very good application that follows up, and we're always trying to improve in this area, but in the end, I would be happy to see more people turning directly to the departments with their issues. This culture that you can write everything in Facebook and just assume that somebody's going to see it and address the issue, that's not the right way to do things. It's a little bit embarrassing when you write to the departments and you don't get an answer, you're completely ignored. I have to say that's really unpleasant. I'd be very happy to get a copy, CC me on those letters. It's the matters of the school and also the hearing impaired center. We have 5 teachers, 16 children, 2 Arab girls and 2 Arab adults. It's a very, very difficult situation and very unsafe as well. I don't sleep well in night knowing that, and I assume that you too have some responsibility for that. I got an answer that was really, we don't have a budget for a guard. I didn't ask for a guard. And you can meet people halfway and think creatively, and not just say, just to give this laconic, dry answer is very unrespectful. But after a lot of mails that I sent, I finally got an answer. First of all, I'll be very happy to see those things that got on your nerves. That's really not right. And the second thing is, you tell me how many people do you know who would be willing to be cleaning workers? We're constantly looking for cleaning workers who meet the criteria, number one, of the police, that they don't have a criminal file or a sexual background or anything like that, and also they meet the security criteria. It's very difficult. We like to see workers of a certain type. Ultimately, it's a matter of supply and demand, and the companies hire the people that they're able to hire. So I say once again, they do what they can. It's a matter of supply and demand, of wage terms. We know what we would like to see and what we do have. I'm hearing people complaining all over in the schools, teachers, and I can't hear her. Perhaps we need to pay a little more so that they won't only hire Arabs for these jobs. For the hearing impaired children, last year we found ourselves locked with them in the school. When we wanted to go home, we had to look for someone to open it. We were stuck with them.
2 small things. I noticed today that there's no crosswalk anywhere on Matipyawa land between because my daughter was crossing the street today and there was nowhere to cross. Do you know where? All the way up and all the way down.
Near the traffic circles.
No. There is already one by the traffic circle, and there's one all the way down by Pitu Maktoret, and there's nothing in between. And kids get off of the buses and there's nowhere to cross. They can't walk all the way up and they can't walk all the way down.
There are laws where you're allowed to make zebra crossings. You can't just put it anywhere because that's where the bus stops. There has to be a field of vision when you have a crosswalk.
Okay, wait, one more thing. I said two things. Also, just as a possible solution to the parking issue on Matik Yoel Cohen, you know, there's a small migration underneath number 46, I believe, and it's a piece of dirt that I don't know what it's intended to be used for, but a little, yeah.
Planning, it's being planned there. Parking is being planned there.
עכשיו כנראה שזה עוזר לכולם, אני מיחידה גדולה של משום הללו, משמעותית שאף אחד לא יקרה.
בגדול גם בתחום הזה, אפרת נכנסה
In this area too, Efrat has become involved in replacing all the water meters with remote reading of the water meters. They cost 600 shekels each, and half of the cost is paid by the residents and half by the Moitzah. And the big advantage of these remote meters is it enables us to monitor and immediately identify it when somebody has a water leak. If in the past you went abroad, you came home, you found your house was flooded, now we get a daily indication of anything unusual, and you know, if we see someone has used a lot of water in an extraordinary way, they could have a burst pipe, or they could have just decided to wash the whole house with a lot of water, but we would actually go and find out. And we'll have a similar situation with the electric meters as well. I don't know if this is the right forum. Every day, we are the last stop. Can't hear her. We have to wait almost 35 minutes for the bus. What time? I'm not a complainer. What time are we talking about? And wait at the stop sometimes from 7:10, knowing that a bus is supposed to come between 7:15 to 7:20. My daughter likes to get to school early, but in fact, she gets on the bus at 20 to 8 or even 7:45. Today it was 8 and 2 minutes. Thank you very much to everyone.